President Gotabaya Rajapaksa completes 1 year in office, delivers a special statement to the nation. Prime Minister pledges to develop the nation despite major challenges.
කොයිතරම් දුෂ්කර වුණත් රට පාවා දෙන්නේ හෝ ධන නමන්නේ නැති මිනිසුන් හැටියට අපි ඉස්සරහට යනවා.
Budget statistics are contradictory, Dr. Harsha De Silva reveals in Parliament.
අපිට ආරංචි වෙනවා මේ දත්ත විද්‍යාව කරන්න එකඟ නොවිච්ච මේ භාණ්ඩාගාරයේ ඉහළම පුද්ගලයෙක්ව එතනින් අයින් කරලා කියලා.
Stop intimidating journalists and social media activists and tolerate criticism, opposition leader requests from the government. Prison break attempted by 5 inmates at the Bogambara prison. 1 dead, 4 captured.
Welcome to Primetime News on TV1 in your top story today. Today marks 1 year since President Gotabaya Rajapaksa was elected as the 7th executive president of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka.
Since 2005, Gotabaya Rajapaksa was popular among the people of this country for 2 reasons: his role as the Defence Secretary and his services for urban development. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who narrowly escaped an LTTE bomb blast in 2006, was instrumental in ending the 30-year-long war on the 19th of May 2009. Since then, the beautification of cities was embraced by the people of this country as a creative approach of a working man. It was this attraction that made a cadet officer who joined the army in 1971 and retired as a lieutenant colonel in 1992, the commander-in-chief of the Tri-Forces of Sri Lanka. At the 2019 presidential election, Gotabaya Rajapaksa was elected as the 7th executive president of the country with 6,924,255 votes cast in his favor. He won the confidence of 52.25% of the country. In an unexpected turn of events, Gotabaya Rajapaksa's government faced a global economic downturn, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic in the immediate aftermath of his victory. Sri Lanka was among the countries that successfully curbed the first wave of the COVID-19 virus. These efforts continue to be a top priority of the president to protect the lives of the general public of this country. During the past, the president has taken many initiatives for political discipline, a disciplinary society, and an effective public service. The president ordered for the state emblem to be displayed instead of his photograph at government institutions and assigned a committee of experts to appoint heads of government institutions. The exorbitant salaries paid to heads of state institutions were normalized. He ordered for his oral commands to be treated as circulars. Public servants were ordered not to interfere in party politics, and the president went directly to the people. The appointment of an ombudsman to the office of the president, granting jobs to over 50,000 graduates and appointment letters to another 10,000 are among the president's notable accomplishments. Another decision taken during the year was to employ 100,000 low-income earners. Prisons were completely restructured and steps were taken to curb underworld activities. It seemed to be abundantly clear that direct decisions were taken in the formation of domestic and foreign policy when licenses required for sand, clay and soil were abolished, and the import of minor export crops such as turmeric, pepper and cinnamon were ended. A task force is also working to eradicate poverty. A health and social security fund has been established for social welfare. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa continues to place the interests of the people above all, while leading Sri Lanka into the future.
Mahinda Rajapaksa made history in 1970 when he entered parliament as the youngest public representative to be elected into parliament at the time. Entering his political career as a representative of the constituents in Madamulana, he went on to win the confidence of the entire nation and win the hearts of the people, and was elected to the office of president twice. His sound leadership that led to the end of the 30-year-long war will forever be etched in the hearts of all Sri Lankans. In his political career of 50 years, he twice held the office of opposition leader, served the country as prime minister for 4 terms, and led the nation as the president for 2 terms. After his defeat at the presidential election in 2015, Mahinda Rajapaksa re-entered the political stage with a Padayatra campaign in Nugegoda. He then went on to establish one of the strongest political parties in the country under the name of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. Mahinda Rajapaksa oversaw the establishment of a strong opposition in parliament that was able to overthrow the government in power for 52 days, where he was appointed as the prime minister in parliament. His political career is a handbook of politics in Sri Lanka. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, we wish you a very happy birthday.
With those celebrations, of course, the debate on the second reading of the 2021 budget began in Parliament today. During the parliamentary sitting, opposition MP Dr. Harsha De Silva disputed claims made by the government in the budget speech delivered yesterday.
They
have deceived the people unlike any other year in 2020. They have made changes to the accounts after the audit carried out by the Auditor General in 2019. The central bank has projected the country's economic growth to stand at minus 1.7%. However, the figure was disputed in yesterday's budget speech, which read that Sri Lanka's nominal economic growth is projected to stand at 6.7%. This is astonishing. According to the Finance Ministry, this is true. But what are the projected economic growth rates in other countries for 2020? In India, it is minus 10.3, Thailand minus 7.1, Malaysia minus 6, Pakistan minus 1, Indonesia minus 1.5, Maldives minus 18.5, and in Singapore it is minus 6. Only China has projected a positive growth rate of 1.9%. France is minus 10%, Canada minus 7, Germany minus 6, Japan minus 5.3, Korea minus 2, Spain minus 13, and in England it is minus 10. Against such a backdrop, how did our figures increase? If Sri Lanka is to achieve a 1.5% economic growth rate, inflation must be maintained at 8.2%. The central bank is saying that inflation rates are standing at 4%. However, the government is claiming that it stands at minus 8.2%. In the 92nd page, it states that economic growth is minus 1.5%. But on the 6th page, the economic growth rate is indicated as 2.2%. Greece experienced a massive collapse in its administration after fabricating figures. Governments were toppled while the economy experienced a massive downfall. People were left helpless. According to the central bank's report for 2019, the country's expenditure, excluding debt repayments, is 2.915 trillion rupees. However, according to the 2021 budget, the expenditure has been indicated as 3.428 trillion rupees. How can this happen? This means that either the central bank governor or the president's secretary is lying. Who is speaking the truth? According to the appropriation bill for 2020 that was presented in October, the total expenditure stands at 3.556 trillion rupees. But according to the appropriation bill for this year, the expenses stand at 2.854 trillion rupees. This is a reduction of 702 billion rupees. A billion is worth 1,000 million. The 2019 budget deficit is 6.8%. However, based on their calculation, it stands at 9.6%. In the case of GDP estimates, the value has been marked at 15.462 trillion. According to the budget presented yesterday, the data listed out in page 19 shows that the budget deficit stands at 14.3% instead of 7.6%. We have learned that a top official at the Treasury who does not agree with falsifying these calculations has been removed. We need officials who will not bow down to politicians. It is wrong to strip such officials of their titles.
Who will benefit through tax amendments?
Taxes have been increased by 49.5%. Who has to pay these? It is the ordinary people. On the contrary, individuals have been allowed to bring out black money and invest them at a 1% rate. Ordinary people do not have large amounts of money to hide.
What is the motive of extending the retirement age of employees?
අර්ථාධක අරමුදල 50
Retirement age of employees has been increased by 5 years from 55 to 60. What is the ulterior motive of this? That means that EPF payments would be delayed by 5 years. The government can borrow these funds, invest them and also repay their debt. The interest rate on the balances in the fund has dwindled drastically. Many people depend on these interest payments. However, the government can now borrow this money. The fund has been set up for the workforce in the country and not to be used by the government for their own needs. Therefore, I urge you not to do this. If you have money to repair and construct roads, you don't have the moral rights to say this.
අපි මිනිස්සුන්ට සීනි බෝල දෙන්න බෑ කියලා කියන්න සදාචාරයක් නැහැ කියනවා.
ලංකා ඉතිහාසයේ නිදාසින් පස්සේ
The Good Governance government presented the highest number of budget statistics with distorted figures in the history of post-independence Sri Lanka. They sold off the Hambantota port for $1.4 billion, claiming they were unable to pay loans but did not utilize a cent of it to settle debt. During the Mahinda Rajapaksa era, the country boasted the highest figure of foreign reserves in over 70 years, 8.2%. However, your faction said the interest and loan installments could not be paid. But I would like to inform my learned friend that cash outflows in relation to loan installments and crude oil were substantially lower during the first 3 years of the Good Governance government than the entire Mahinda Rajapaksa era. You engaged in a tax hunt. The Gotabaya Rajapaksa government was the only government which stood by the people, taking the bold decision of restricting imports into the country.
හිතගත්ත එකම ආණ්ඩුව බවට ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ ආණ්ඩුව පරිවර්තනය වුණායි කියන එක මම මේ වෙලාවේදී මතක් කරන්න කැමතියි. අපිට යථාර්ථය ලබන වසරේ බලා ගන්න පුළුවන්.
We can further comprehend the reality by next year. We have been degraded to a C on the credit rating scale. The next stage is D, which means default. If we are degraded further, there is no saving this country. We are on track to be degraded. The past year saw the highest number of notes being printed in the history of the nation, which is more than 500 billion, that is 3% in comparison to GDP. Debt stock has increased by 2.2 trillion within 2020, a 17% increase in comparison to last year. If this trend continues, by the time the incumbent president's term comes to an end, Sri Lanka's debt stock will hit 28 trillion. Our government had many shortcomings, but we did not leave the country bankrupt. We have already been named as a nation which is on the verge of facing bankruptcy with a number of other countries.
Anyone with a clear conscience will admit that the past 5 years led our country towards destruction. There was no COVID, no terrorism, neither were there any natural disasters. But despite all that, the country's economic growth reduced to 2.3%.
පහුගිය කාලේ රටේ ආර්ථික වර්ධන වේගය 2.3 දක්වා අඩු කරගත්තා.
This is essentially an old model presented with new words. When considering the tax amendments put forward, it is evident that they have been introduced to benefit capitalists.
එවැනි කණ්ඩායමකට කියන එක තාමත්ම පැහැදිලි.
මේ අයවෙන් සල්සැටි ඕනෑම ආයෝජනයක් සඳහා එසේ මුදල් යොදවන ව්‍යාපාරණ පිළිගත් දියුණුම් ප්‍රකාශයක් දීලා ඒ සල්ලි ගේන්න පුළුවන්.
They can present an affidavit and bring in money. These are the tax concessions they promise their close associates. This is a parliament research journal. There is no trace of what happened to 54 billion rupees during the tsunami. Are they trying to launder that money? Their close associates are given concessions and amendments are made to launder their money. But the people are burdened with more debt.
දැන් මේකේ මොන බොරුවක්ද මේ රටේ ජනතාව රවට්ටන්නේ?
The Janata Vimukti Peramuna expressed views regarding the budget at a media briefing held today.
The government has said that it is hoping to spend 3.5 trillion rupees. However, this budget can be considered one that does not mention any practical ways of generating income. The income the government has generated within the first 8 months of 2020 is 906 billion rupees. For the next 4 months, the government is probably able to earn an income of 200 billion rupees. How can the government earn double the income of 1.9 trillion if they don't have revenue streams for the next year and if they can't propose a program to introduce one? The government has not answered that. The government is expecting a huge income from taxes, but the government does not have a program to collect those taxes.
Against such a backdrop, Hanunnethi questions whether the budget deficit has to be covered by obtaining loans.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister said in Parliament that we have taken $6 trillion in loans. The projects to which the loans were taken are failures. Foreign consulting firms have been given most of it. A feasibility study on those methods would not be practical. A similar thing happened during the previous regime when the Prime Minister was the Minister of Finance and the President. Now it is said that 60% of those loans will be used for domestic purposes. Who will give us loans for domestic purposes? Because we can't go to the international bond markets. We are considered a country with poor debt repayments. Our foreign asset reserve is less than the share of foreign debt. Because there is a program of being unable to pay off loans even if we use our present foreign asset reserves.
The opposition claims that several media personnel, social media, civil and political activists have been arrested and interrogated in the recent past over statements made on various platforms. This matter was highlighted in Parliament today.
At present, anyone who criticizes the government is arrested. There was a news report yesterday that 30 individuals who had engaged in such criticism are currently in prison. We urge the government to accept criticism. When we were in power, our government was criticized via social media as well. Even MP Eran Wickramaratne was summoned to the CID regarding a statement he had made at a press conference. Do not try to suppress and intimidate the general public. Democracy still prevails in our country. The government cannot put forward any excuse regarding this matter. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa expressed his views in this regard at a media briefing convened at the parliamentary complex today. I advise the members of the ruling party to study the constitution well. Freedom of speech has been guaranteed by law. I have faced media criticism as well. However, I have never attempted to attack, suppress or criticize the media at any given point. The government has taken several undemocratic steps to suppress the media by arresting and interrogating media personnel. We urge the government to accept criticism. Do not lay a hand on the media. Meanwhile, civil activist Chirant Amarasinghe was arrested last evening by the CID at his residence in Piliandala due to a statement he had made on social media. Chirant Amarasinghe was produced before the Colombo Magistrates Court today and was released on a personal bail of 100,000 rupees. The Centre for Environmental Justice has thanked the contribution made by the media in the struggle against the destruction of the Wilpattu forest. They say that their struggle to stop the deliberate destruction of the reserve areas of the Wilpattu National Park has gained value today. The Centre for Environmental Justice has reminded that it is the result of the relentless efforts of many people.
Moving on to your COVID-19 situation update in Sri Lanka. 3 COVID-19 deaths were reported today, raising the death toll in the country to 69. 233 COVID-19 cases were reported today, bringing up the total number of COVID-19 cases in the island to 18,308. Another 377 COVID-19 patients were discharged from hospital after they made a full recovery, and this brought the total number of recoveries in the island to 12,587. The Colombo district has been the hardest hit in Sri Lanka by the second wave of COVID-19.
5 of the COVID-19 deaths which were reported yesterday were from the Colombo district. 3 of the deceased passed away at their homes. A 65-year-old male was a resident of Colombo 10. He had died of complications in high blood pressure triggered by the COVID-19 virus. The 82-year resident of Dematogoda had passed away at his residence. He had died of complications in diabetes due to the COVID-19 virus. A 69-year-old woman in Ratnalana and a 71-year-old woman from Kiralapana have also passed away while at their residences. The cause of their deaths were identified as high blood pressure and diabetes triggered by COVID-19. An 81-year-old female also passed away due to COVID-19 while receiving treatment at the National Hospital. She was a resident of Colombo too.
Majority of the cases are reported from impoverished neighborhoods in the Colombo city limits. The population density in these areas is very high. There is a very high chance of the virus spreading. We are carrying out PCR tests for these people with the hope of stopping the spread. That is why there are reports of an increased number of COVID-19 patients being reported from especially around the areas that come under the CMC. The support of the general public is very important to stop the spread of the virus in the country. We hope that the prudent people of our nation will realize this and support the curb of the virus in Colombo and in the entire country.
ඉදිරි කාලයේදී රටේ ජනතාව අපගේ බුද්ධිමත් ශ්‍රී ලාංකීය ජනතාව මේකට තේරුම් අරන් ඉදිරියේදී කටයුතු කරමින් රටෙන් විශේෂයෙන්ම මේ කොළඹ දිස්ත්‍රික්කයෙන් කොවිඩ් ඉවත් කර ගැනීමට අපිට සහයෝගය දක්වයි කියලා අපි බලාපොරොත්තු.
The commander of the Sri Lanka Army made this statement at an event held at the Sri Lanka Engineering Corps Regimental Headquarters premises in Mattegoda.
5 inmates at the old Bogambara prison attempted to scale the prison walls and make a getaway. During the attempt, one of the inmates had died and 3 others sustained injuries. Police said another fugitive was later found.
The prisoners who attempted the prison break were those who were sent to the Bogambara Old Prison for quarantine following the incarceration of drug offences. While 2 of the men were taken into custody in the prison premises, 3 others jumped out of the prison wall. According to the police, 1 of the 3 had managed to escape. However, the other 2 were injured and 1 died upon admission to the Kandy Teaching Hospital. The 30-year-old was jailed for murder and drug offences. The injured prisoner is being treated under the supervision of prison officers. The magistrate's inquiry was held this morning. The Kegalle Superintendent of Prisons conducting investigations regarding previous incidents arrived at the prison premises this morning. The prisoner who escaped was arrested this afternoon while hiding in the vicinity of the Provincial Education Department premises near the prison. The inmate will be placed in mandatory quarantine for yet another 14 days and remanded. He came from this area and told that he escaped from prison. Soon after that, I closed the doors and informed the others.
The prison officers intervened and brought the situation under control. Shots were fired to prevent the prisoners from escaping. 2 inmates and 2 prison officers were injured. These inmates were involved in a protest at the prison recently. A prison superintendent has been directed to investigate the matter.
අධිකාරීවරයෙක් මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් පරීක්ෂා කිරීමට යොමු කරලා තියෙනවා.
A minor tremor was reported from Digana Kandy this morning. This is the 4th tremor that was reported from the area during the past 3 months.
The tremor was felt in Digana, Alutwatta and Abukote area in the Kandy district. The Geological Survey and Mines Bureau said the tremor measures 2 points on the Richter scale and was experienced at around 9:28 this morning. However, the tremor measured at 3.5 on the Richter scale at the seismometer installed on the left bank of the Victoria Reservoir.
ඩොංගල සබ්දයක් ආවා. අර එයා පැත්තේ ගෙවල් ටිකක් හොල්ලනවා වෙන්නට. විත්‍යල්ලා හිටියා. ඉනෝට මම දෙතරණක් දැක්ක වුණා.
Tremors were reported 3 times prior to today in the areas of Gurudeniya, Rajavalla, Thalatoya, Haragama and Anuragama areas in Kandy. The epicenter of the tremor was in close proximity to the Victoria Reservoir. Our correspondents had visited these areas on previous occasions to report on similar tremors.
The tremors that we experienced 2 months ago bear similarity to the tremors that were reported today. These had occurred in an area with limestone. It was at the valley in which the Victoria Dam is located. These limestones extend all the way to Digana. The excavations carried out on these limestones will have a major impact on the reservoir. These excavations in this area must be stopped.
KPMG's budget analysis for the year 2021 took place this morning. The keynote address was delivered by State Minister of Money and Capital Markets, Ajit Nivad Kabra.
And this budget is the foundation on which the entire thrust of the development activities as well as stabilization is going to be built upon. Look at it from the challenges that it has to face. We have 14 districts in our country which are affected by it. And we think of elephant-human conflict as only being a conflict where a person gets killed or an elephant gets killed. No, it's a lot more deeper than that. Many people cannot send their children to school. Many people cannot engage in the economic activities and they close down shop by 6 o'clock in the evening because they cannot do anything further. So entire economic activity of so many districts are affected so badly by this conflict, and we need to address that. So that's another priority area that the government will be engaged in. Every time when I meet people in various parts of the country, what I was told is not that they want the gas price reduced by 100 rupees. But what they said was, I want a job for my son. They came and said, I want water. I'm having my wife traveling 3 kilometers with a Kalagediya. Now, those are the important parts of providing goodies to the people. Now, we have changed our overall goodie structure, and we want to ask people to understand that. When we provide a solution to the human-elephant conflict, that's a huge goodie for people in 14 districts who have to grapple with this problem every minute of their lives. When we build a new road where they can bring their produce to the market, that's another huge goodie, because we need goodies of that nature. That is what goodies are.
What are your thoughts about how is the government trying to leverage the resources that this country has?
I think we have some extraordinary resources, Riaz. You know, the amount of mineral deposits that we have and the true value of those deposits is astronomical. We need to make sure that the resources that we have are actually properly utilized. One is the minerals, which we have plenty. We would give support to the mineral exploration as well as the mineral being used in a productive commercial manner, which would give a massive amount of new sources of revenue to our country. The second is the fisheries and the ocean. We actually have approximately 21 times the size of our country as an exclusive economic zone. Now that's an enormous resource that we have, which we have not really utilized all these years.
What is the government's plan with respect to the failed finance companies and the finance companies that are struggling?
Clearly mentioned in the budget that we have to combine these companies and strengthen them. We started this project when I was the chairman, SEC, and Honorable Nivad Kapral was the governor, the consolidation of financial companies. And that was the original intention. Consolidate and strengthen these financial institutes, and unfortunately that effort did not continue beyond that. That is why we found some companies failing in the recent past, and some companies are on the verge of failing, and eventually poor people who investors are suffering. So the solution, only solution that we see is to merge them, and that is what has been proposed in the budgets.
You can watch the complete KPMG panel discussion on TV1 after prime time news tomorrow. Innovator, pioneer, revolutionary. Elon Musk's name is synonymous with all of these. Now, Elon Musk is poised to overtake Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg to become the third richest person after Tesla's shares rose 13% following its selection to join the S&P 500 index of leading US companies.